All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. As always, host Brandon, we got Matt Law joining us from Germany at the Euros. Matt, how is it going for you this tournament?
Yeah, it's good. It's really, really good. I always think, I'm going to sound like a footballer now, but I always think once it gets to the knockout stage, it really, really feels like it gets going. The group stages have been good. Certainly the early games are really good. There's some good games at the end of the group stage as well. But I always think once you get to the knockouts, that's the place to be. That's where it gets really exciting. So we've got 2 days without games now. So a bit of preview to be done. And then it's all systems go on the knockout.
For sure. What is like the biggest difference for you between a tournament and, kind of club football? Obviously, club once, maybe twice a week. These national tournaments, multiple matches a day, especially in the group stage. But yeah, I mean, kind of what is it like for you right now? Is it just a sprint?
So yeah, I mean, it's funny because in a tournament we have literally press conference every single day. The FA in England are good enough to put us up 1 or 2 players every single day to talk to. So we often come and watch training in the morning. They sometimes close that down closer to the game, and then 1 or 2 players every single day talking to. So that it really does. There's really a lot to go at, lots of material. I mean, it's always a long slog away from home, but it also flies by because of the amount of work. Totally different from the rhythm. I know we can have a lot of press conferences back home, especially when it's sort of European football as well as Premier League football, but it's a totally different rhythm to back home. And I've got to say, I do enjoy. I still have to dip in and out a little bit of the transfer stuff, which we'll talk about later. I can't completely switch off, but it is nice to cover football without transfers as well. It feels quite pure. Is probably my best way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there's like the national pride that you get that you don't normally in the domestic league matches and things like that. So that's cool. Has anyone or team caught your eye and kind of been like a huge
Well,
surprise for you?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned this because I want you to somehow edit in me saying on the last time I was on this show that Austria were going to win all their remaining matches of the group and qualify as my dark horses because I'd seen them lose to France, I think, and been very impressed with them. And Nick, it's probably my first ever prediction that's come off so well. So I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. And Nick asked me for my dark horse, and I said then that Austria had really impressed me despite losing, and that I thought they were going to win their remaining games. And I didn't expect them to finish top of the group, but they look good. And I've been looking at them a bit closer over the last few days, and we've been sleeping on Austria. Their record over the last 2 years is absolutely incredible. So I'm not even sure we should be calling them a dark horse. They should just be called a horse. Do you know what I mean? They're in there. Ralph Rangnick, for all we mocked him at Man United, has done a great job with them. They just look. They haven't got like a star names, but they just look a really well organised outfit with so much energy. I think the only fear for them looking forwards, and we're looking at it a little bit because England could potentially play them in a semi-final. Ho ho, will we get to a semi-final? But England could potentially face them then. The only thing you'd say is whether they tire because they're very high intensity and the games are coming thick and fast. But yeah, Austria, I really like Austria. And actually Switzerland have looked really good. Like them too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, look, there's always a fun one that happens. The earliest like big upset I remember was Greece in the 2004 Euros.
Yeah, but they were terrible to watch.
I'm just saying though, like from an upset standpoint and a dark horse, like you don't get much more obscure than Greece
No,
that year.
that's true. But they were so bad. They were so unenjoyable to watch. They were horrible to watch. Whereas, Austria, I really get excited watching Austria. Switzerland have looked good. I caught a bit of Georgia last night. Wow, they've got some good players. Like it's really nice to see some of these nations not just causing what we might traditionally cause upsets, but actually playing some really good football as well. That's a nice thing. And the young players too. The young players in this tournament have really grabbed it by the scruff of the neck, which is good fun.
No doubt. Yeah. I jumped on with Ollie and Sam to kind of look at like, hey, who are the top players in the tournament right now that you always know players are going to get bought off of a tournament cameo, right? Versus what they'd done the previous 2 seasons. And I look, there's a nice variety of different players as well, which was fun. So if you missed that one, go back and listen to it. It's definitely a wide angle view on that. But Matt, I think we can jump into some stuff as well as we do. Per usual, always want to say shout out to our amazing community. All the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify do help us. So if you haven't done it and you want a free way to help, that will do it. Obviously, hit YouTube. Jake is crushing it over there. Road to 50K on YouTube. Having a lot of fun doing that. our weekly newsletter, The Dispatch from Sam CFC Central. Then lastly, for a few bucks, you can join the best Chelsea community around, our Discord server. So anyways, Matt, tip of the spear for you guys. We've had a little bit of a Chelsea roundup on the Euros.
Yes.
I'll not stack the deck on this, and I'll just let you say it. Out of the handful, because there's not many Chelsea players at this tournament, who do you think is the standout player for Chelsea right now?
Wow, what a question that is. That is a great question. I mean, there's a few former Chelsea players. I mean,
That doesn't help.
I don't want to rub salt in the wounds, but Mark Gahey for England has been England's best player by a million miles. We're talking to him today, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him because England's defence was a big worry. And Gahey has been so composed. I mean, he's been better than Stones, and I rate Stones as probably the best centre back in the world, or close to the best centre back in the world. He's been so composed on the ball, so composed at making challenges. Look, like I said, I'm not rubbing salt in the wounds. I think Chelsea should be proud of him, to be honest with you. He came from that academy, and I've just been super impressed with him. Cole's cameo for England. A lot of our preview to the next game is going to be how can you now leave out Cole, because Cole's cameo in that game against Slovenia was a really good cameo. 20 minutes, he was so bright, so lively, so fearless, everything we expect. And look, I don't know if you're too young for this, or a lot of your watchers might be too young for this, but I wonder whether he could be the David Platt of this tournament for England. Back in 1990, David Platt came into the England squad as a substitute on the back of an incredible season for Aston Villa, and he just had no fear, and he scored some fantastic goals. And I just wonder whether Cole could have a similar impact if he's let off the leash by Gareth Southgate and started. I want to see him start. I think England fans want to see him start. Chelsea fans want to see him start. So I really think that I really hope that Cole Palmer gets that chance, because in 20 minutes he did more than quite a lot of England players have done in the previous over 200 minutes. I can't work it out off the top of my head, but yeah. So he stood out to me. Crikey, who else? You're testing me now a little bit. Again, Lukaku's had a bad tournament, let's face it. I mean, I think there would have been a hope. But we hear that AC Milan are interested in him. We know that Antonio Conte would take him in a heartbeat. He spoke about him the other day. Didn't rule it out, I noticed. Just spoke very glowingly about him. He would take him in a heartbeat. But I imagine that Chelsea's hope would he would have scored a lot of group goals, because he's usually a good goal scorer in the groups, Lukaku, at tournaments. And Belgium had a group where you looked at it and thought, yeah, he could score a few in this group. And he's been a bit unlucky with VAR. He's had a lot chalked off, but he's had a bad tournament so far, and that won't have helped his value. Albeit Conte would take him tomorrow, whatever he did, quite frankly. So that rounds up Lukaku. Mudryk. Yeah, I was hoping for more from Ukraine. I really wanted to get behind Ukraine. I'd sort of earmarked them as my second team, and I did think Mudryk obviously scored that goal to get them into the tournament. He would have been hoping for more from the tournament, so not brilliant from Mudryk. Who am I missing? You might have to help me a little bit now.
Cucurella,
great
the
tournament.
standout player for Chelsea this tournament.
I've missed the best one. You're right. I think, who was it? There was a pundit, wasn't there, before the first game, who said that, was it Gary Neville? Who basically said that Spain have got no chance if Cucurella's playing left back. Well, I'm not going to say it's Gary Neville because I can't be sure it was, but that pundit, whoever it was, has got egg on his face, because he has been sensational, really, really good. And I've spoken so much on this show before about Cucurella. He is just the nicest guy. Everybody in Chelsea speaks so highly of him as a character. So I'm always pleased when things go well for Cucurella, because he had such a difficult start to his Chelsea career, and it's great to see him having a great one. I mean, Spain look like the team to beat, don't they? We all thought it was going to be France, but so far it looks like Spain. So yeah, Cucurella, I definitely should have mentioned him. I saw, actually, moving away from the Euros, I saw Kendry Paez scored in the Copa America last night. Youngest ever. Is he the youngest ever goal scorer in the Copa America, or the youngest ever Ecuador goal scorer in the Copa America? It's one of those two things. I just caught it very quickly.
Youngest ever. I'm sure he's the youngest Ecuadorian.
Wow. I mean, wow. I haven't seen a lot of him. I've obviously not seen him play live. I've seen clips, but everything I hear about this kid is hugely exciting. And
it was a penalty, just to put it in context. Before
But hey, you've got to have some balls to stand up and take a penalty at that age in the tournament, and no matter where the game is. So it's easy to think that taking penalties is easy. As an Englishman, we know that taking penalties is not that easy. So no, fair
He
play
did
to
the
him.
Cole Palmer, so that's now
That's
Estevao
been
and Kendry have done it.
And yes, there was someone else in the Euros who did it as well, wasn't there? Someone else in the Euros recently nicked it. Was it maybe Gakpo? It's a celebration that's going round.
Yeah.
I've got to say, they've all nicked it from Morgan Rogers at Aston Villa. If you look back at the history,
There's
but I think
always a Villa link.
there is. But I am willing to concede that it has become Cole's, and from now on, if other people doing it, they're not nicking it from Cole. I just want to see Cole do it at the Euros. Really want to see
Yeah.
Cole do it at the Euros.
Yeah. Connor got his start.
Yeah, I felt for Connor. It didn't go great. I thought he'd earned that start, and it just didn't really work out. It was a terrible half of football for England. He struggled in the role. It's a role that everybody seems to be struggling in for England at the moment. It won't affect him. I know what kind of lad he is. He'll bounce back from it. I suspect he won't start the next game now. I'd expect Mainu to start the next game, but Connor will come back from it. Connor will be fine, but it didn't go as he'd probably hoped. Is probably the fairest way of putting it.
Yeah, and then Broya is the last one with minutes, and
do you know what? I've actually, just because of my scheduling, I've not really seen Albania play.
Yeah,
So I can't really give an opinion on how he's done. It wouldn't be fair on him. So yeah, I'm in the dark on that one. The funny thing is, actually, talking about the rhythm of the tournament, I probably in the days where I wasn't covering tournaments, I would watch actually more of the tournament being at home, because I would just clear my calendar and watch game. Obviously, and I'm not, world's smallest violin here. I've got some work to do over here now, and whilst I watch as many games as possible, it's actually impossible to watch every single one with work going on.
yeah. And then, I mean, the other two players that are there, just, Petrovic and Ian Maatsen, who I don't think is really a Chelsea player anymore. Matt, back to Villa
No,
links.
they're just waiting for the announcement on that. It's a timing thing. It's all done. It's done. Yeah, actually, we're talking, as well as Mark Gahey, we're talking to Ezri Konsa today, and I actually thought I was going to be asking Ezri about becoming a teammate of Ian, because England looked like they were going to be playing Holland at one stage, but that question's going to probably have to be left for whether we get Holland later on. But hey, Villa fans are super excited about that signing. I think it's a good deal for everyone, because Ian, it's just because, look, whether people agree with it or not, it's really not worth getting into whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, because it's been the case for ages that Chelsea were going to sell him. That debate's been and gone for me. I do think 37.5 million coming in for him is very good money, even though I know he got into a Champions League final. It's a very good player, but I still think it's very good money for a left back. And I think it's a great deal. It certainly improves Villa massively, to be quite honest with you, from several different aspects. So I think that's a good deal for everybody. He hasn't played though yet, has he? He came in as a late draft. He might have. Has he got on? I don't even know if he's got on.
He hadn't after the first couple rounds. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyways, we'll pause there. We've got a lot more because I'm going to ask some pointed questions of Matt about these players and what it means for Chelsea. So thank you to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, Matt. I think obviously Mudryk not having a great tournament is not ideal, but I think him being with Ukraine is probably good for his confidence and a lot of things like that. With Enzo Maresca coming in, loving a 1v1 dueling attacker, it seems like Mudryk fits that profile. Now, the end result has always been the tough thing for him. But I guess, like, how are you kind of piecing together Mudryk? Because he is such not polarizing, but I think, obviously people are just, some have patience for him and some don't. Obviously, the Euros hasn't gone well. How does this kind of play into his momentum heading into the season with another new manager?
I would hope it doesn't impact his Chelsea momentum, because he was doing. There were really some good signs over the course of the sort of last 10 games or so, and the last few months. Basically, when Chelsea started to really kick in and improve, when things started going in the right direction for them. And clearly there are things that need to be worked on, but there was a lot there to like about where Mudryk was going. I felt under Pochettino, and also just the way he was playing in the team. And I would definitely expect him to get a big chance next season. That's definitely the noises coming out. Chelsea actually had some inquiries for some very big teams back in January to try and take him on loan. And I think one team were even interested in signing him permanently, and they just knocked it all back. They weren't interested. They were very committed to him. I think, like you say, I think there's a feeling within the club that Maresca's style will suit him, and that Maresca will look to use his strengths and what he's good at. I just think it was such a big thing for him to score the goal for Ukraine to come to this tournament. I don't think that a quiet tournament and not a great tournament from Ukraine as a whole will impact that, because it was so huge for them to get here. I mean, I spoke to Sudakov before this tournament. I spoke to Palkin, the CEO of Shakhtar, to do stuff about Ukraine, and just talking to them about what it meant to the country, just for them to be here, just for the country to be able to support it. I think that was far bigger than actually them sort of wowing on the pitch, and it's a bit of a shame they didn't. But yeah, I wouldn't expect it to. The good thing is as well, looking for positives for Chelsea on it, he gets back in plenty of time to have a very good pre-season. He will have benefited, I think, from continuing to play a bit of football as well. He should be in a good place and a good rhythm. So yeah, I think he should be okay. I don't think what I don't think is I don't think the Euros are going to have an adverse impact on him, and I do still think he's a huge part of Chelsea's plans at the moment.
Yeah, that seems to be the way it's kind of played up right now. So again, the interest in January, I think, makes it interesting. You say big team. Are we talking like teams in the Champions League that were
Yeah,
interested? Oh,
huge
wow.
European team. Can't get an awful lot bigger than them, to be quite honest. But I can't. I would be betraying the confidence if I said which one, because I'm not sure whether I'm meant to make it public.
You're good. You're good. I think the context is enough for us to kind of just see where the other value around the football world is on him. The another one is Petrovic, and the only reason I bring him up, Matt, isn't necessarily because he hasn't played, or at least not in the first two, but he's there. What do you have any idea what's going on with the goalkeeping situation at Chelsea? Kepa coming back, three other goalkeepers have been on loan, a lot of movements. Rob Sanchez, like we kind of look at it and say we don't feel like this is the final version of the goalkeeping structure unit that they want, but that's from a fan's perspective. What are you hearing?
Yeah, look, I spoke a little bit with Nick on this, but maybe we can expand on it a bit. Look, where I think we are, and I'm always wary of the fact that things are always subject to change at Chelsea quite quickly, I've found. But where I think we are is that they want to look at Sanchez in Maresca's style of play. So I think Sanchez will go into pre-season probably not as the number one, but as the guy who plays more, because I think they feel more secure and sure of what Petrovic is and what strengths and weaknesses he has. I think there's a feeling and a hope that Sanchez can benefit from Maresca's style. Now, I said to Nick on my last show, it terrifies me slightly because everybody at the club says he's good with his feet. My eyes, when I watch the ball goes to his feet, my heart sinks and I get very scared. But look, people in that club know more about football than I do. So maybe behind the scenes, they see something that I don't see. But anyway, therefore, I think, well, I know that the plan is at the moment for in pre-season to look closely at Sanchez in Maresca's style of play, in Maresca's system, give him a real chance. They're very sure of what Petrovic is. They think he's had a fantastic season. He way exceeded their expectations the way he came in. I still think they know there's development there to be done, and I don't think they would necessarily go into the season with him as number one if they were unsure on Sanchez. But I think if anyone comes in goalkeeper wise, it would be late, and it would be because there's been a slight doubting of Sanchez. At the moment, the only way I see them buying a goalkeeper at the moment is if it's a young goalkeeper, and they go for another young one and try to bolster the department that way, because they're going for an awful lot of young players for the next 2 years. You know, we've seen Esteval. There's a defender whose name I always keep forgetting who they've
Ansel
been
Nino,
talking to. Yes.
Boca
Um,
Juniors,
yeah, and obviously I'm sure we'll get round to him. There's the Barcelona lad. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I'm not sure if it's Gui or Guy but
Giu,
Guy,
I
Mark
believe.
Guy. And they're looking for those kind of players at every single position, really. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a goalkeeper of that profile come in, but it would, from the information I've heard, it would surprise me massively if they signed a senior goalkeeper
Hmm.
in the next couple of months. I think they'll be going on tour with pretty much their current goalkeepers and seeing where they come out of their tour in terms of confidence in them.
Well, I mean, look, if you want to play with feet, I thought that was Kepa's big thing, right? If he's coming back, is he going to get a look, you think, if that's the priority under Maresca's style and things like that? Or is that a kind of a Lukaku situation where that ship has sailed?
That ship sailed. That ship sailed. I'm told that the Real Madrid possibility of loan back isn't out the window. I think they could move because Courtois is back now. I think they could seek to get a nice profit on Lunin. It seems to be some of the talk. Obviously, I don't have incredible Real Madrid contacts, but I do know Spanish journalists.
Got to
So there's
pay
a
for
bit of
that
theory.
Mbappe bill.
Exactly. So they could look to try and cash in on Lunin and bring Kepa back in on loan, which I think he would jump at if that was a possibility. If there's not Real Madrid, you start to wonder, and you start to, a bit like Lukaku, you start to think, would Saudi be the only option for him because of those wages? But no, the ship has sailed for Kepa at Chelsea.
All right. Well, fair enough. I guess how I'm summing it is they're comfortable with Petrovic being in the roster. They
Yeah.
want to push Sanchez to figure out if that is the right fit or not. And then if
And you've got to remember with Sanchez, he was massively Ben Roberts' shout.
right.
Ben keeps sort of changing positions at Chelsea, and last season under Pochettino, he wasn't doing as much goalkeeper coaching. He was more sort of ahead of the department because Pochettino had his own goalkeeper coaches. But I don't know this for certain yet because they haven't started pre-season training, so it hasn't become totally clear. But I get the sense that Ben's going to be doing actually more stuff on the coaching field again with the goalkeepers. And Robert Sanchez is Ben's guy, so
That's
he will want
true.
to work with him.
And it seems like they really like Ben Roberts in the
Oh
hierarchy.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
So isn't Ilario still there too?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a bit
I think
awkward. We have about as many goalkeeping coaches last season than we had goalkeepers, it felt like at times. Okay, the last one I want to touch on here is Cucurella, right, Matt? Like he's having a fantastic tournament. I think surprising a lot of people, showing some discipline, but also I think Spain's style plays into a lot of his strengths, like very clearly. The left back is an area of need. You can't rely on Ben Chilwell, vice captain. Cucurella, obviously, with his invertedness, which could play into Maresca's quite nicely, as we talk with Sam, CFC Central, on potential scouting reports and position things. My take on Cucurella is this is win-win. You either get a player who's coming off a good end of the season, a great tournament, and he's going to be flying high, or you get a player whose value's never been higher and you cash in on it if you don't think he fits the system. But how are you reading the Cucurella situation? Are you hearing any inkling on their thoughts on him?
I still think they're open to bids on him. I mean, he's one. I think they know that, especially with a good tournament, and there has been a lot of sort of interest in him around Europe. He's one I think they know they could get some decent money for, and also he's on decent wages. They do want to bring a younger profile of left back in. I think I'm not talking about a kid. I'm not talking about someone for like 2 years' time, but I do think we know that they're looking at left backs, and I was told that they'd like a younger profile of left back. To do that, they would still need to probably shift one. But Ben Chilwell's on very big wages, and obviously he has had injury problems. I can't, as good as Ben is, but because of his wages and how much he would cost, I can't really see in this PSR world we're living in that someone's going to come in and put a huge bid in for Ben Chilwell. So Cucurella's one to watch. They won't actively sell him. I won't actively try to sell him. I don't think he's sort of up for sale and on a list that's being passed around everybody. But they're certainly sort of open to bids. Is probably the phrase to use on him.
I think that makes sense then, right? And because I could see someone from Spain potentially coming in, like that seems classic,
Exactly.
right? Like the Spanish national team players, they love having them play in La Liga. So that's where I was thinking something potentially could happen, especially the way things have been going. Came through the Barcelona system, right? He's got
Exactly.
ties, so
I bet the problem is everywhere. The market isn't very liquid, and the problem is everywhere is the money and the wages and whatnot. And but there'll certainly be teams interested in whether anyone thinks they can get close to doing a deal on him because of the money. It's difficult because it's a very difficult market to operate in at the moment.
for sure, no doubt about it. Okay, I guess Gallagher. I just always want to touch on him, make sure we're keeping a pulse on him. Things kind of seemed up in the air. He's at a tournament, so no talks on contract. But then there were some rumors that Villa and the club were talking very concretely about him. So again, he's got a little bit of power with a year left on his
Well,
contract.
and the other interesting thing, just in the last day on Connor, is it's emerged that while we've been at the tournament, that Tottenham had a bid turned down for Jacob Ramsey at Aston Villa, who's
Mm.
not the same as Connor, but I cover Tottenham quite a lot. I
Hmm.
can't see Tottenham planning to buy Jacob Ramsey and Conor Gallagher. Now, Villa turned it down and they're not going to sell Jacob Ramsey. But that's immediately raised my antennas to it about whether they're now looking around elsewhere. So yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, nothing will happen with Connor now with other clubs or Chelsea until whenever his Euros are finished.
Yeah. All right. Well, there we go. All right. We're going to take our last ad break. When we get back, all about the transfers. So buckle up, Chelsea fans. Be right back. All right. What about how about this? Internal transfers out. Obviously, Ian Maatsen leaving. You touched on Lukaku potentially trying to find a home in Italy, which we all know about. Touched on Kepa a little bit. Are there any other surprises maybe that we're not paying attention to because they still need to thin the squad? Broya's got to be looking for a home. Ziyech is still around.
No, I don't think Ziyech is he?
Oh, all right.
I think Ziyech's contract. Yeah, I think Ziyech's contract. I don't think he comes back.
Good.
I think that.
All right, then we got that one cleaned up.
I don't think you need to worry about that one because I spoke before. Casadei is one who could go. He's got interest. It'll be players like that, Broja, but he's been at the Euros, so again, with his Euros over, that might speed things up a little bit. Everton are one to watch on Broja, but they have to get rid of Calvert-Lewin. Now, Calvert-Lewin was definitely going to Newcastle at one stage last week, and that seemed to all completely fall apart. Broja, I know, is the first choice to replace Calvert-Lewin if he goes. The expectation at Everton is Calvert-Lewin will go because he's refusing to sign a new contract and only has 12 months left. So that's one to watch. But if no one comes in for Calvert-Lewin for a while, then it might drag and let somebody else in. Yeah, and then it's all the players basically who are not guaranteed of getting much first team football. So Casadei, I really wonder what the plan is on Carney.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke about it with Nick, whether Carney's in that squad, and especially now Amari Kellyman is coming in. I think Kellyman will go out on loan, probably. He will do pre-season with Chelsea. The only way he won't go out on loan is if he's absolutely red hot in pre-season. And Maresca says, I need this kid as part of my squad. Very highly rated, by the way. I know, I've actually seen him play a couple of times, and I know how highly he was talked about at Villa. He was talked a bit like Jack Grealish used to be talked about at Villa. So very, very highly rated. He's a kid. You never quite know how these things develop. But yeah, there's not a new one as such. No, there's not a new one. Lukaku's interesting that he's now got interest from Italy, though, because I'd become sort of resigned to the fact that it was going to have to be Saudi or bust for Lukaku. But it feels like he might have a couple of options now outside Saudi, which will help Chelsea. They need a leverage tool on Lukaku a little bit.
What about the center backs? Because obviously Chalobah has been mentioned, especially because it's pure profit on PSR. But like Disasi had a decent first season. Benoit has not had a good season, and he's still young. Levi has cemented himself. So as I kind of look at and then West Fofana coming back in the mix, as I look at that group, I know Thiago left. It kind of feels like one of those center backs need to move.
Chalobah.
It will be him.
Well, I can't say it will for absolute sure, but
he'd be the first name they're looking to move out of that group.
Yeah. Again, sorry to keep saying this. Me and Nick were saying, we both don't agree with that. We both really like Chalobah. I feel like we're here every single summer with Chalobah. It seems to be the same story with him. Predating this ownership, by the way. But yeah, I don't think anything's changed there. Disasi, I think, will 100% be kept because they see him as more experienced. He's 26, is he?
Yeah, I think he was 25 most of the season.
Yeah, so he's coming up 26, or he is 26. So I think they see him now as the more experienced guy that they need in there. They can't obviously count on Fofana yet. They need to see how he comes back. Barry Shield, they're not going to dump this quickly. I'd be extremely surprised. I actually thought towards the end of the season he had some quite decent performances again. He's just come back off obviously that injury. So yeah, I don't think anyone but Chalobah, and I do think it will be Chalobah. They've definitely had some inquiries for Chalobah already, and there's a lot of people interested. But again, there's this whole sort of PSR shakedown to be done And then once that's done by June the 30th, we sort of go again, as it were, on transfers.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can go externally here now. So obviously, Kellyman seems to be done and dusted. At that point, 18-year-old from Villa, not probably not coming to the first team, like we said. Can you give a quick comparison? Like when Chukwuemeka came in, I don't think he had a lot of first team minutes, but his ceiling was super high, and he ended up getting some features, and I think bedded himself pretty quickly into the first team.
Yeah, Chukwuemeka was probably the best part of a year advanced to where Kellyman is at Villa. Kellyman has been on the bench a fair bit, and he did start, or he got off the bench in a game against Manchester City to make his Premier League debut. He played in the Conference League. He did very well against Hibs in the Conference League qualifying round. But yeah, Chukwuemeka was probably a year where Kellyman would have been looking to be at Villa this coming year, i.e., trying to get up to maybe 10 appearances, something like that. So I think he's a little way off. Like I say, I think the plan is to loan him, but to look at him in pre-season first to check that Enzo doesn't actually think he needs him part of his squad. Chelsea, I'm told, first inquired about him back in January. And I'm also told that they've sort of moved now because the thought is that they would have maybe some competition next summer. He has been, if you follow Villa things as I do, he has been one who's quite often linked with a lot of very big clubs trying to nick him out of sort of Villa's youth system because he's known around the country as being this hot talent. So I think they probably moved 12 months earlier in terms of trying to see off the competition for him. Similar price, obviously, to Chukwuemeka, but that seems to be the sort of now the sort of price for that level of young player. It'd be really interesting how he does. He's an attacking midfielder stroke forward. He can play as a sort of advanced 8. He can play as a 10. He can play as a kind of false 9. He can play off the flank. He's been compared to me by people at Villa as Kai Havertz, actually, funnily enough, ironically. He's quite tall and gangly. He's a really exciting talent. How much Chelsea fans see of him next season may not be all that much, but he's a really exciting talent for the future.
So yeah, 18 pushing 19. Aaron Anselmino, 19 from Argentina. Estevao, one for the future. Kendry Paez, one for the future. Matt, I have a little bit of a rant with the sporting directors to say we barely had a passing season. And I think most people would say we did not meet expectations. Thankfully, we had a good run at the end to save it all. And then we switched managers again. So we're kind of starting over. I don't really see the signings or the links to win next season. It looks like they're continuing to push success out 2-3 seasons down the road. Elise fell through. Isak fell through. Whether or not they were the right players and things like that. Like, how are you reading this transfer window? Because I just see 18, 19, 20-year-olds constantly being linked with Chelsea.
I'll jump in on just Isak and Elise first. Isak, they haven't missed out on Isak. I think that's unfair. And the reporting of that was a little bit odd. I think back in January, Newcastle and Chelsea were talking about a lot of things. There's a relationship there for sure with the Saudi ownership there. You know, we know that Chelsea's owners have got links in Saudi, and there's definitely a relationship. And I think there was a conversation in January, from what I'm told, around what Newcastle may or may not have to do around PSR. And I think it's kind of been intimated to me without being said directly that the conversation went a little bit like, if you're going to have to do something on Isak, or if he's one of them, then, you know, just make sure you let us know, because he's obviously an incredible talent. It became quickly apparent that A, they weren't going to do anything on him in terms of sorting out their own PSR, and B, even if they were forced to, the numbers involved in Isak would be insane. I mean, Newcastle are literally talking like £200 million worth of. So that nothing really has been going on there this summer. They're not in the market for Isak this summer, so it'd be unfair to say they missed out on Isak. It's a bit weird how that reporting's come around this summer, to be honest with you, because it's not really strictly accurate. Elise, now I was a little bit surprised on Elise because there was definitely confidence within in Chelsea on Elise, but then we hear it's to do with the wage bill, which I do understand. What I can't understand is they surely knew his wage expectations from last summer, because they got certainly quite far down the line with him last summer, and I can't imagine his wage expectations have changed that much. So I would have imagined they'd have known roughly what ballpark they were taking on Elise, and that's why I'm slightly confused, and I haven't really had it explained to me why it went from quite a positive feeling around Elise to very quickly being that it had gone, and that Chelsea just weren't willing to get involved on the wages. Elise's camp say differently. Elise's camp say he just chose Bayern Munich, and that he didn't ask Chelsea for anything that they couldn't pay. It was purely because he wanted to go to Bayern Munich. So it's worth making that point. All I would say is that what Elise does show is Chelsea can't go out and smash this wage structure they've got, because it will create a riot in the dressing room. It's one thing having Sterling in there already above players who've come in after Sterling, because they can justify that. They only really set this new wage thing in the January after the first summer, because in the first summer I think there's an acceptance that they sort of panic bought all over the place, and overspent a little bit on various things in order to bolster the squad up. Then from that January when Mudryk came in, there's been a very clear wage structure. And if they break that for someone now, you're going to have Cole Palmer knocking on the door. You're going to have Caicedo knocking on the door. You're going to have Enzo Fernandez knocking on the door. You're going to have Moises Caicedo knocking on the door. You're going to have Nicholas Jackson knocking on the door. It will be non-stop. It will create an absolute riot. So I actually think they do have to stick to their wage structure now they've set it. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos, and it's going to create a really, really tough situation. But what I don't understand is why seemingly from the outside, they didn't really seem to appreciate where Elise would be pitching himself in terms of wages when they were quite confident of trying to do that deal.
Sure. And look, I think that that's probably, not that big of a surprise. I am looking at Capology. Raheem is the outlier at 325K, right? Bully's first signing, probably just wanted to get it done. Like, great for Raheem to take that opportunity to maximize earnings. Then it's Reese, Wes, and Ben all at 200K, and Kunku's at 195, and then everybody else is you pretty much between that 100 to 200 range, with a handful below 100K, including Cole Palmer. But he was young and unproven, so that makes sense. He should get the bumper contract. But Matt, my strategy question I think is still there. I get they can't go smash the transfer record. They did Caicedo. They've done Fernandez the season before. They did even lobby at 50 million. The only link, and I don't even know how strong this link is, Calafiori from Italy for left back to like help us win this season. We know we need goals. Like, the midfield seems good as long as we can stay healthy. I don't know. This is where I'm just kind of missing that typical, like, they should be throwing darts here. 1-2 players they've identified. No, they want the system. I guess I'm still not seeing that. It's continuing the football manager exercise.
And it's they have faith in the squads that played the majority of last season. I mean, they think that squad should have done better, and also showed that it's going in the right direction to do better. I'm with you. I would actually like to see an experienced, nailed-on top-class centre-back. I would like to see a nailed-on top-class striker. And then after that, I would probably go along with the strategy of adding bits of youth here and there. But that's just not where their strategy is at the moment. And can agree or disagree, but it's kind of a bit of a waste of energy, if I'm honest with you. They have great faith in this squad that they already have. They have great faith in the midfield that they've built, bringing Lavia into that now. They have great faith in the majority of that defence that they've built. They have great faith still, despite the fact they want to sign a striker. It's clear from the profile they're looking at, they still actually have great faith in Nicholas Jackson pushing on from last season. They've got Nkunku coming back, which I know they think is a big deal. They've obviously got who they believe is a superstar in Cole Palmer, and no one would argue against that. So they've got faith in this squad. They've got. I mean, it showed from what happened at the end of the season with Pochettino. They've got more faith in the squad than they had in the manager. And I think we're seeing that with the transfer strategy, that actually what they believe is that with a tiny little bit of tweaking here and there, that this squad can actually do a lot better. Is it a winning squad? I'm with you. I probably don't think it is a winning squad, but I think they would disagree with me.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, like I said, a little bit of experience to bolster. Raheem and Chilwell, I think, are your veteran players in the squad at this point with Thiago leaving. Um, yeah, well,
My problem for a lot of last season was that I didn't feel that there was enough leadership in that squad, and that was even with Thiago there, because Thiago's style of leadership is not a traditional sense of leadership, from what I'm told off the pitch. Um, and he has to do a lot of management of himself, and obviously he didn't speak English very well. So I felt they were lacking leadership all through last season, and that doesn't look like it's going to get addressed. And Thiago obviously won't be there as well. So you're really looking for people to stand up. Now, I'm sure they've earmarked people who they believe will stand up. If you take Gallagher out of that as well, the leadership aspect for me, I would like to see people who can take leadership roles come into there. And that's why I talk about a really top class experienced centre back and a top class striker who you really feel can take the pressure off the rest of the squad a little bit. But I don't see it happening at the moment. It would be a surprise to me if that happened at the moment.
yeah, I'm kind of with you right there too. I mean, because we've had, you know, Tosin. I always struggle with Adarabayo. I struggle with his last name. You look at that's why I was kind of asking about the defenders, because if you've got, Fofana coming back, Adarabayo coming in, along with our two guys, or not the two, but we've had multiple um, groups of defenders in there. With Levi's locked in, but again, Benoit and Chalaba and Benoit, it's kind of like, again, one or two more are going to have to go to bring that person in. So that's why I was trying to see if there's any inkling of,
Yeah. We
people.
forgot. It's bad actually. I actually forgot to mention Tosin when we went through his defence. So I'm just going to call him Tosin.
Yeah.
Um, he has a level of experience to him, but I don't see him as coming in and being a leader in that group. But again, there's going to be a lot of numbers. I still stick to the fact I think Chalobah would probably be the only one who goes. Levi might end up playing out left a little bit under in this Maresca system. I could see that happening again. I mean, I know we've spoken about Cucurella, but yes, they want this very large squad. They see it as a squad to be able to cope with 75 to 80 matches because of the Club World Cup, because of how seriously they're viewing that, and obviously they expect to go very far into the Conference League. So they want at least two players of what they believe to be top quality for every single position, which is where Elise came in. Because I've got to say, as phenomenal a player as Elise is, and as good a signing as it's been, I was a little bit like, do they really need him? But then again, it's this kind of two top players for every position, and this 75 to 80 game thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think they will try and sign a winger. I'm being told that they're really looking at right-footed winger options. They feel they're okay with left-footed winger options. I don't have a name for you at the moment. I've had my head down in the Euros a little bit, but I do believe they will sign a winger of some description.
So it sounds like looking at left back, right-footed winger that'll play on the left. Any other like definite positions that number 10
Well, I still think another striker. I don't think.
striker?
I still don't think Huey from Barcelona. Although I'm told he's coming into certainly again for pre-season the first team squad, and the thought is he will be part of the first team squad. I think they're still looking at that striker position for someone certainly a bit above that level, but we've also seen who they've been linked with, and they're not the top level. Jonathan David, of all the ones linked with, is probably at the highest level of them all, and he's not super high level. There's competition for him, by the way, as well, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Chelsea are not the only team interested in him, but I'm told that it's become quite complicated, that striker situation, because they've obviously made inquiries and approaches on about 5 or 6, and it feels like we're waiting to see where the balls land a little bit on that.
All right. Well, I am buckled up because July 1st will be here before we know it. I still don't think a lot's going to happen until after the Copa and the Euros are wrapped up. So that just means, Matt, it's going to be a frenetic summer in America yet again.
Exactly. And I don't think I'll be there, because I think despite England stinking out the place a little bit at the moment, I think I'm going to be here with England for a bit longer, which certainly reduces the chances of me going away again this summer. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, you would then literally spend the entire summer away.
Yes, and then I may be asked to spend all the time away from my own house if I were to do that.
Exactly. So a little bit of balance. No worries. Well, anyways,
Yeah.
Matt, we appreciate you jumping in from Germany, keeping us up to date on what is going on. We've got the positions identified, names TBD, but we will be all over that. So anyways, Chelsea fans, make sure to follow Matt. Check us out on YouTube. Join the Discord. Best Chelsea community around. But until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.